Ladies and gentlemen, in international news headlines, the French President Emmanuel Macron, this evening of May 13th, 2025, has just made a series of statements, in which, throughout these statements, he jumped from one topic to another. He made some U-turns. In any case, he talked a lot. This happened today, during the interview he gave to the French channel TF1, the French national channel, TF1. And this interview given to this national channel marks, according to them, Emmanuel Macron's strong return to the national political scene, since he lost his grip after the Big Bang that occurred in the National Assembly, the dissolution of the National Assembly, the dissolution of his government. He had remained on the sidelines of French national news. He hardly spoke about French national news. He was much more active on the international stage, and this time he decided to speak out. These are the statements we are going to look at in this video conference. Most of them obviously concern Russia, the war in Ukraine, and its positions on sending French troops to Ukraine. From this, we can gather that Emmanuel Macron may have learned his lesson, since many French people have recently taken to the streets to express their frustration with the direction of his foreign policy. So, before we continue, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to share this video conference. It needs to be shared in every possible group. Give it lots of likes, and above all, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our news or international updates. Let's move on to the key points of his statement. For the first point, the French president acknowledged in his interview, he admitted Ukraine's inability to reclaim the lost territories. Here is Emmanuel Macron now admitting that Ukraine can no longer retake all the lost territories. So he is aligning himself with what Donald Trump said from the beginning, because Trump had said it was impossible. Yet, the idea of reclaiming the conquered territories was something they themselves put into Volodymyr Zelensky's head and made him believe that it had to be one of the conditions before entering negotiations. This is one of the reasons why the negotiations initiated by America failed. If today this gentleman sits there and says that he acknowledges Ukraine's inability to reclaim all the lost territories, honestly, we ourselves are lost. He says, however, that Kiev should be in a position of strength before any negotiations. The negotiations are supposed to take place in 2 days. What position of strength is Emmanuel Macron talking about? This is the question we are asking ourselves. Emmanuel Macron has also admitted that France has reached its limits when it comes to supplying weapons to Ukraine. He admitted that France has reached its limits in terms of delivering weapons to Ukraine. France can no longer send weapons to Ukraine, but everyone already knows this. France simply doesn't have the means. Even when France was supplying weapons to Ukraine, France didn't have the means. She was just forcing herself to do it. And in this effort that Macron has always had to make, we see the consequences on France's national public life. We see how the citizens are suffering. We saw students come out and protest because their budget, the university budget, they cut part of the budget. We saw doctors come out to protest, as well as teachers and unions. So, on the other hand, Emmanuel Macron confirmed that in coordination with the United States of America, France and the European Union were preparing a new package of sanctions against Russia. And in relation to that, by the way, President Vladimir Putin responded during a high-level meeting today, May 13th, 2025, in Moscow. Now, regarding the frozen Russian assets. President Emmanuel Macron emphasized that he acknowledges there is a lack of legal basis for the confiscation of these Russian assets. But they themselves have long advocated for the confiscation of Russian assets held in Brussels. But if he himself now admits that there is no legal basis, even though he has always insisted on it, despite his Minister of Economy and Finance having stated that it was impossible to confiscate or even simply freeze Russian assets, was, as he insisted, to stand up and violate international law. But in the end, he realizes that it can't work. He admits it. And then, a little further on, he insists on the need to prevent the return of these funds. He acknowledges that there is no legal basis for confiscation, but he says we must prevent their return. You see, he says one thing and its opposite at the same time, opposite, which completely proves Vladimir Putin right when he says that Europeans have always said one thing and its opposite. Please share this video conference with me. Share it as much as possible. Share it. So, the aspect that draws even more attention, especially from the French media who have highlighted it in their headlines, Emmanuel Macron says, we decided not to deploy our troops in Ukraine to avoid upwards escalation. So it's out of fear. It's fear. Emmanuel Macron confirms that he decided not to send his troops to Ukraine. But who could have imagined such a statement from Emmanuel Macron? Yet he was the one leading. He told Europe, we should send troops to Ukraine. We should help Ukraine. And it was even on that basis that he decided to set up the coalition of volunteers. A coalition of volunteers to send soldiers to Ukraine. But Emmanuel Macron has just betrayed his peers. I'm going to talk about the new German Chancellor. I'm going to talk about the head of the British executive, Keir Starmer. But he has just betrayed them. The very foundation of their friendship, which allows them to take off in the train bound for Kiev. That's the foundation. The coalition of volunteers. This coalition of volunteers, what is its reason for existing now? It no longer has a reason to exist. They set up this coalition of volunteers. They called it volunteer because overall, the other European states refused. They said they could not send soldiers to Ukraine. The United States of America also refused. They said they could not send soldiers to Ukraine either. They also cannot guarantee the security of the states that will send their soldiers to Ukraine. So that's why they said, no, we are setting up a coalition of volunteers. Those who are willing, those who dare. And today, they come to tell us that they have decided not to send their troops to Ukraine. In doing so, they are betraying their peers. He made many other statements that we will come back to in other video conferences. Thank you in advance for sharing this as much as possible. I'll be back with more news for you shortly. This was the voice of your one and only samurai.